Well, hello, hello, hello. You are listening to the No Brainers Empowering Possibilities Show. These are dialogues of encouragement with fresh perspectives, invitations to ahas, a little bit of science, and a dash of behavioral psychology, some usable, easy skills to try now, and a whole lot of creative fun. So, if leveling up is on your radar, my friend, you are at the right show. I'm your host, Roseanne Marsh. I'm the author of the teen and parent empowerment curriculum called Level Up. And you are listening to episode number 39, Living a Life Without Expectations. I have to tell you, a little while ago, I was talking with a friend and I was explaining some of the things that were going on in my life as we were catching up with one another. And as I expressed some of the changes that were happening in my life, and some of the expectations that I had with the new life changes in my household and many other things, the words he said resonated, but scared me to death. He said, really, you just got to let go of expectations. Now, as I press a little bit further to say, well, what do you mean? Not have expectations? He said, yes, as far as this scenario, just let go of any expectations. And as far as that scenario, let go of those expectations too. Now, from someone who sets goals and stretch goals at that concept seemed absolutely foreign to me. And in fact, I thought, how do we even let go of expectations? And are we expected to have expectations? As crazy as that may seem. I mean, let's think about it. If you're building a home and you have a blueprint, aren't you expected to have the results come out the way you have designed it? My friend went on to say, just think about it. No expectations, no disappointments. But how does that work? Our brains are wired for expectations. Our brain is all about the neural pathways that we have. It's about experience. We look at life based on the experience we have and the predictability of what we have already gone through. So when we have expectations, it's literally a follow through of the scientific evidence that is recorded in our neural pathways. So how do you just unplug all those neural pathways and no longer have expectations in your life? So I asked a couple of my friends, what do you think about having no expectations in your life? Well, it struck fear in the hearts of most of them. And some of them said, I don't even know how you would achieve that. Is that realistic? Let's look at a story from one of my good friends that said I could share her story. She has a poignant example of what an expectation looks like and maybe an outcome that happened because of it. Her family was traveling to St. George in the Utah area, and they had hiking, they had hot tubbing, and they had theater on their mind. She said the day after they got down there, they were hiking through the subway, which is a lot of water hiking, having lots of fun. She had in her mind that everybody would be hiking together. But soon she found that some of her kids went ahead and she was left behind with those that were a little bit slower. By the time she got halfway through the hike, she came upon one of her daughters sitting there crying. She said, why are you crying? And she said, they left me behind and went on ahead. So she soon realized that it was probably unrealistic to have the expectation that they would be hiking together. But as soon as they were done with that hike, of course, they wanted to hike the Narrows too, wanted to get everything in they could in this trip. And so they hiked the Narrows only to get back to the hotel just in time to get ready to go to the theater that night. They had hopes that they would be sitting in a hot tub, nursing their sore muscles and relaxing before they went to the theater. But they hurried and changed, went to the theater. They were so dead tired during the theater that nobody really enjoyed the presentation. So she said, here I had this expectation of this amazing trip where we were going to hike and laugh together. Instead, we were separated because of abilities. There was so much packed into one day that everybody was dead tired and didn't even enjoy what I thought was going to be the culmination of the day. Now, she said, I had in my mind what that was going to look like, but my expectations were not met. And she said, I was not happy. It just didn't go the way that I had it planned out. Well, isn't that what expectations are? Expectations are the blueprint that we have built around anything. And when things happen differently from what we had anticipated or what we had the expectation around, there's so many different emotions that come out. It could be disappointment, it could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be confusion, it can be shame or dejection. And we do it to ourselves. We have expectations for ourselves. And instead of being merciful with ourselves, we're actually angry that we haven't been able to exceed or meet our expectations. Do you know there's actually a syndrome out there where we all believe that we're above average? And when they did this testing, most people would say, yeah, I rank above average. And then when their own behavior isn't there, or their own performance or in comparison to others doesn't match up, their expectations are not met. And then it's the self-deprecation, the worthlessness in comparison to where they should sit or feel they should sit with other people. But does that mean that we don't set goals or stretch goals or whatever? No, it doesn't mean that at all. And maybe it means that we don't give up on them, but it's how are we reacting when what we thought was going to happen doesn't happen exactly the way we thought it should, or we haven't achieved exactly what we thought we're going to. We grow up as little kids thinking, okay, my life is going to be this, and I'm going to be that, and I'm going to be, I'm going to be married, then I'm going to be an astronaut or a nuclear physicist, and then I'm going to have 12 kids, and then when our life turns out different, what do our expectations do to us? And that's the biggest question when I was researching and pondering, how can I have a life of no expectations? And would there be a benefit to that? You know, we have basic needs of food, water, oxygen, all of that. But we also have the need of having predictability. Again, that's from our life's experiences. But on the other side of the coin, there's the yin and the yang that comes into effect here in our life. We also need variety. We also need that unpredictability. Doesn't that seem like it goes counter? But it truly is what we want. Now, think about this. When you were in school, remember the days when they said, tomorrow is going to be our field trip. There was an anticipation about that field trip. And maybe there were those that weren't okay with status quo being changed. And I wanted to go to school in my class. And the rest of us were like, wahoo, we get to do something different. And maybe there's some expectations we wrapped around there. But we were excited because we didn't know what the day was going to bring about. There's something around that word anticipation. Even the travel industry said that they have surveys and different studies that they've done out there that people have more fun planning their trips than actually being on their trips. Now, I don't know about you, but I absolutely love the trips I've gone on. But I will say the trip that made the most difference to me was one that I had no expectations about what was going to happen because I knew very little about the place I was going. And I wasn't sure what we would experience. But I did set one expectation that came back and kind of bit me a little bit. I went on a trip to Israel. Can I just say that was life-changing for me, all the way from the sights and sounds, all the way down to the amazing food that they had. Now, I had one expectation. One expectation was I thought that our tour guide was going to give us information in a certain way. And that didn't happen. But another tour guide who was indigenous to Israel was full of so much information that it made up for what I thought we were lacking in our tour guide. But unbeknownst to me, the twist and the turn, something I didn't anticipate, could never have anticipated, happened at the very last day. And that's when we were invited to see pictures from our tour guide who had been invited into a private viewing of an underground dig that was happening in the city of David. Now, I won't go on and tell you everything, all to say it was mind-blowing. And as I sat there, I thought I had no expectations of what this would be like, other than I thought our tour guide would do this. Instead, he blew the lid off of it. He totally blew our mind, showed us something that not anyone gets to see when they go over there. The anticipation is exciting, but when we release any expectations and are grateful for the things that are happening and stay in the present and just live what's here and now, we can allow doors to open that possibly never would open had we had those strict parameters of this is how it's going to happen. Let me give you an example. You guys have all heard that joke where there's a guy in the middle of a flood. This town has flooded and he's on top of his roof and he's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be saved? And he's praying and saying, God, I need you to save me. I need you to save me. And along comes this little guy in this canoe that looks like it's going to tip over, and he's going, hey, I can help you, jump in. He goes, no, I'm okay. God is going to save me. I'm okay. And so the guy goes, all right. He goes on his way. And then this motorboat comes by, this fishing boat, and he says, do you want to jump in? He goes, no, it's okay. God is going to save me. And then he goes on his way. And then here comes a helicopter. And they're like, hey, we can save you. Climb on up. He goes, no, I'm good. God is going to save me. Well, what happens? He's swallowed up by this flood. And when he gets on the other side, he said, listen, I thought you were going to save me. And he said, well, I sent you a canoe, a boat, and a helicopter. And you chose not to take the ways that I was going to save you. So sometimes we have parameters and this strict blueprint around what it has to look like and how people have to react and what they need to do. Now, does that mean we have no expectations of anyone? That kind of makes me shudder to think about that. But can we maybe change the terminology? And I think that's where I started thinking, okay, I can actually step into this if I change the terminology a little bit. So maybe instead of expectations, there has to be a ground level of deal breakers. There has to be deal breakers, right? Like even in choosing a spouse or have different things, there has to be deal breakers. Those are the solid foundations, or these are the non-negotiables, and they have a consequence that have to go with them. And then there are other layers up there. So if other people don't come through in a way that we expect or want, is it one of these deal breakers? Or is it one of these other things that, hey, we can let them have their agency? Because isn't it about letting other people have their agency? But who do we control? The only person we control is us. So when I know that, okay, is this one of my deal breakers? Then there's a consequence and I know how to react because it's a basic. I haven't set 20,000 deal breakers that it's impossible for anyone to be that perfect. But when they don't react or something doesn't go the way I want it, if I can stop and be in the moment and go, wow, what did I just experience? Okay, was that frustration? Was it that? Yeah, I felt that. But what else did I experience here? And did this open up a different avenue, or did it give me a different experience, or did I learn something because it went a different way from what I anticipated? When we can release the expectation and go into a state of anticipation or a state of hope or a state of intentions, then when it is that picture perfect, I only want to be saved off my roof in a certain way, we can allow for incredible things to come in sometimes. My trip to Israel, had no idea it would end the way it did. But if I had been such a stickler on, okay, this has been a wash because I wanted this, and not gloried in, oh my gosh, and I learned that, and I saw the foundations of that, and I ate that. I learned a portion of history that I'd never known before, and I saw layers of cultures, and I met the most incredible Israelis. I would have missed out on a ton. But more specifically, the end result of that amazing trip. Now, let's go past the trip. I have some deal breakers in my home, and I have what I have called expectations. But now I've decided, okay, these are the foundational things that have consequences, and I can't control whether these young adults that are living with me will follow through or not. But what I can control is how I will react to their lack of follow through. Now, if they don't follow through, there are consequences to it, but I can't let it ruin my life. I can't let it create in me a stress level that affects my health. I heard from sometimes we have to let go of the happiness that we have in our mind and just be grateful for what we have. So maybe it's going to be accomplished in a different way in a different time frame. Can I let that go, and can I be in the present, and can I enjoy what's in front of me? And we really have two choices when we create that blueprint of our life. And yes, there are goals that we need and aspirations and intentions and anticipation. When our blueprint and our reality don't match, that's when the pain comes in. That's when the agony, the anger, all those things come in. And there's really two different things that we can do. We can either work harder to get to that blueprint, or we can change our blueprint. And sometimes changing your blueprint is just breaking things down into tinier goals. Now I'm talking about something that is internal, and I'm also talking about external. If my goal is that my young adults in my home act and do a certain way, maybe the end result is going to happen in a different way, in a different direction, with a different mentor, or in a different time frame. But when I can release, has to be here, has to be this way, has to be on this time frame, has to be done this way, I open up to so many different possibilities that it might even be done in a better way and expose us to different things. Let me give you an example. I have a son that was working for an amazing company, and he had left and he came back and was working for them again. One day he just decided he wasn't going back. And I wasn't happy that he quit, because it's like, no, the expectation is that you work and this person has provided and they have made room for you. And that's the way it is. You need to go back. What happened was he found something right away with a company that's growing, working with some men with a ton of integrity that will teach him additional skills. So my expectation of him staying there because it was provided did not leave open the opportunity of expansion that now is going to happen. Letting go of my expectations so that there'd be no disappointments, and so that I could open up to additional opportunities. I'm curious as to what you're thinking as you're listening to this. Because really, when we think about letting go of expectations, there's like this little inner voice that's like, don't do it. And it's admonishing us to hang on to those goals. That this isn't about letting go of goals. This is about not creating concrete, absolute, it needs to be this way. And maybe this is a semantics of words. Maybe we should turn this into, instead of expectations, which expectations, a definition of how it has to be, maybe we turn this into, these are hopes, desires, intentions. But the opposite of expectation is not pessimism. We can retain our optimism, and we can free ourselves from the need to focus on specific probabilities by just opening our hearts and our minds to a wide variety of possible outcomes. Truly, when we expect a situation, an event, or confrontation to unfold in a certain way, it becomes more difficult for us to enjoy the surprises that have the potential to become maybe profound blessings or maybe to come from it. As we grow more open to unforeseen outcomes, we're going to be more apt to recognize the positive elements that are there in our new circumstances. This really will serve us well when we are called upon to compromise, when life doesn't go the way we think it should, when the world has started doing some unanticipated things. It's going to grant us more flexibility to see some positive aspects out there when we can let go of expectations and replace them with intentions, but being present. The further we distance ourselves from our expectations, the more exhilarating our life becomes. Even though a situation may not correspond to our wants or our needs or our goals, we need to ask ourselves, how can we make the most of this and then best adapt to it? Our life's journey will likely take on some unpredicted and astonishing twists because we are willing to let go of our expectations. Now, I have a little invitation this week. The invitation is, look at a relationship you have and an unfulfilled expectation that you have. My challenge is for you to, instead of focus on that which you don't have, which was probably easy for you to come up with, I want you to focus on 2 or 3 things that you do have in that relationship, ways that you are being fulfilled. When we define how it has to be, an expectation, we may miss out on a better thing. We may be missing out on those amazing things that we do have, focusing on that thing that didn't come about or is unfulfilled. Now, I have to tell you, I bring this up today because it's something that I have been challenged at. And I am not just tiptoeing into it, I really want to put my feet into this and embrace this. Stay in the present, be open for surprises. Don't be so strict in how it has to be fulfilled. Because if you listen to the podcast on intentions, you'll understand how powerful intentions are. And expectations are a pretty powerful intention. We don't want to define it so tight that the better thing doesn't come in and passes us by without not even knowing, or we're so tight in control of how it has to be that the better way of it developing, the better way of it happening, the better way of it being learned goes right over our head. So how do you feel about this subject? I know it may be a little bit controversial, but I'm asking all of us, especially myself, to open ourselves up to more hope, anticipation, curiosity, variety. And can we just say, all right, life, bring it on, because I have no expectations. As always, we are creators, so we decide how we are going to react to life. And the only one we have control over is ourselves. So this week, I hope that there's an expectation that you can throw out the window. I know this is a skill I'm going to try. And if you have interesting ways that you are stepping away from a world of expectation and one of anticipation and awe, then I invite you to share that at info@nobrainers.com. We'll see you next week. Take care.